Wonderlands is definitely not a Borderlands game, and here's why. First and foremost, this is not a Borderlands versus Wonderlands debate. In fact, I'm going to plead my case for why they are actually very different from one another. Today, I'm going to share my view on how these games differ and why, after putting more than 3,000 hours into BL3, I couldn't even last 200 in Wonderlands before I realized this game may not be for me. So that said, let's go over why I think these games are completely unique and deliver very different experiences. Simply put, Wonderlands got endgame difficulty right. Chaos levels are far superior to Mayhem mode in nearly every way. Now here are a few reasons why I say that. 1. Mayhem levels can be adjusted at will once Mayhem mode is unlocked. But in Wonderlands, each Chaos level has to be completed before unlocking the next one. 2. Mayhem modifiers were chosen at random and were just not fun usually. While you can choose your own difficulty in the Chaos Chamber even between rounds. 3. The Chaos Chamber is brutal. You will not survive if your build isn't perfect. Mayhem mode was never even remotely this difficult and didn't seem to scale as well between levels either. You can absolutely feel the difference between Chaos Level 1 versus Chaos Level 5, for example. So, like I said, I have more than 125 days of playtime in Borderlands 3. And never got my ass kicked as much as I have in the 8 days of playtime I have with Wonderlands. I started off on intense difficulty because comparatively the hardest difficulty in BL3 wasn't actually that tough once you got familiar with your gear. Getting through BL3 endgame only really requires a good build for the 2 takedowns. Other than that, you can mostly run and gun with what you brung and get through it relatively easily. In contrast, I have stopped trying to get past Chaos Level 11 or 12 just because the experience is so frustrating. So, what you may not realize, or at least I didn't, until it's basically the final round of the run, is that this is a roguelike challenge, which means no matter how hard you shred through the previous rounds, the final boss fight can still completely nullify your whole run. You don't get to keep any of those crystals that you spent the last 10 to 15 minutes farming. Depending on how hard the level is and what RNG you roll on an enemy spawn, it can take more than 15 minutes to get through an entire Chaos Chamber run, and you won't even know if your build is strong enough until the end. Now, I will confess that roguelike games are not remotely enjoyable to me, so a failed run may affect me differently than it would another player. I am more often than not left in a state of pure rage when I get killed at the end of a run. I have to restrain myself from throwing my controller across the room at least once or twice. I even uninstalled this game out of spite because I can't punch a Chaos Chamber in the face. After dealing with the reality that I may not like this game, I started to think the issue is mainly in my playstyle and unfamiliarity with the absolutely overwhelming amount of new items and interactions to learn. In Borderlands 3, I was conditioned to push forward and shred everything in my path with impunity. Second wins were easy to get for the most part, and your build could be shit as long as you had some good gear. Wonderlands is not like that. I get wrecked on the regular using this playstyle and die very easily. Even if I'm using someone else's build, I will absolutely get wrecked. I don't understand what it is. It's almost to the point where I honestly don't think Healthgate works right. I can get one shot by trash mobs. Like, it's ridiculous. The problem is me and my unwillingness to bend my playstyle to what Wonderlands is asking of me, though. So that brings me to another point of contention. The number of items and skills in Wonderlands is just too much for me to want to learn it all again. Having different prefixes and suffixes is so clunky and makes it a chore to know if what you're looking at is any good. Essentially, Wonderlands is work. Lots of work. I get drained from spending 20 minutes trying to figure out good gear and a build with some synergy, only to get wrecked by one badass pirate or some random mob of skeletons and have to go back to the drawing board. BL3 was no picnic either, but the gear and skill trees were very manageable, and you learned quickly what was good and what wasn't. Mainly due to BL3 dropping copious amounts of legendaries, so it was just a higher frequency of items to familiarize yourself with, and had significantly less variability. BL3 was basically Algebra 3 Trig, while Wonderlands is AP Calculus 12, the Doctoral Edition or something. It's ridiculous. Now, do I dare mention the UI this game shipped with? Clunky is generous, while untested might be more accurate. The UI issues are compounded by the insane amount of reading necessary to understand how any item works. Rerolling enchantments is miserable. Like, why can't I load up a weapon in the machine and not have to reselect it after every single roll? The enchantment machine is awesome, but this kills it for me. Why does an item's description cover up half of the other items in my backpack? Why do I not even get thumbnails to load when looking at my gear? The only issue I had with the UI in BL3 was the goddamn font was borderline unreadable, and occasionally the reload visual glitch, which is actually pretty common in Wonderlands too. Also, co-op is busted in Wonderlands right now, and it's not just from shift or crossplay. Something makes my weapons literally jam and not fire or reload just randomly until I swap away and swap back. I only had 2 crashes while in solo play, but at least 5 while in co-op, and once straight to blue screen. I reinstalled the game and verified the files, but it still happens. That stuff can be fixed over time, obviously, but it proved to negatively affect my experience, as well as my teammates. Alright, so I tell you all that to tell you this. Wonderlands is actually an amazing game. It gets way more right than wrong, and the devs should be incredibly proud of what they made for us to enjoy. So it's with a very heavy heart that I say, even as a lifelong Borderlands fan, this may not be the game for me, and that's okay. Despite having my second favorite campaign in the franchise, like I said, they got a lot of things right, and that campaign was very fun, creative, and only cringe a couple times. I even belly laughed at the jokes and character interactions multiple times. The voice acting, story pacing, and environmental detail are a significant step up from Borderlands 3, which I thought raised the bar incredibly high when it was released. All this said, I really would urge every single one of you that's been kind enough to watch to the end of my partial rant to make up your own minds about this and any other game. Just because a major nerf or balance adjustment is delivered in a hotfix, it doesn't necessarily mean your build is broken or you won't have fun afterwards. For me, I was on the way out even before the nerf apocalypse, so it didn't affect me that much. But I have to imagine if you're a theory crafter or just like farming for god rolls, you have to be a little pissed that a patch has the ability to ruin a build you spent a couple days farming for and tuning your skill trees. Ultimately, my personality and lack of patience just make this game more of a chore than I anticipated, even though I knew going in that it was going to be significantly more complex than BL3. Once all the initial balancing and patching is done, I will definitely be going back to Wonderlands. But for now, it's just not for me. And that's okay.